So I'll start working on this bottom part. So same thing, go into object mode, switch to sculpt, and make sure that you turn on your voxel remesh. And let me just make sure that my modifiers are applied, and yes, they are. Remesh set to 0.005. Again, you might have to put a different number, but for now, this works for me. So I have remeshed, I can start sculpting. So I'm going to take my scrape brush with all the settings that I have before and start chipping in. So I do feel like I need a bit more geometry, so I might just undo my remesh and I'll set it to 0.003 maybe. So yeah, something like this is a lot better. And I'm going to just chip away slowly. And once in a while, you can also chip away downwards so that you have some nice variation. And I wouldn't try to put it evenly. I would try to just have it once in a few places. So it will get pretty repetitive, so I won't have too much commentary, but you can definitely just turn on some music and try to have fun with it. What you can do as well is to just hold control to scrape the other direction, and you can have it go out a bit as well and just scrape in a bit if you like. It definitely creates a pretty cool effect. I probably didn't mention this, but I set my matte cap to this one and I turned on cavity as well so that you can see your crevices a lot easier. So if you want, you can turn your ridge or valley up. Sometimes I would zoom out just to work on a bigger scrape. It's nice to have variation in sizes. Okay, so for this part, I'm pretty happy with this. Let me just go back into object mode. And if your computer isn't too strong, you can always decimate your object after you're done sculpting it. For example, I'll save now and I'll just go into modifiers and try to add modifier and a decimate. So right now, if I were to just hide everything else, you'll see that I have 500k polygons, which is pretty much a lot for some PCs. So just decimate it and maybe put it to 0.3 for now. And it will set the face count from 270k to 150k. Once you've decimated it once, so just apply it by holding Control A over this, you'll see that some parts are not giving as much geometry and the parts where you have a lot of details are given more. So now it is a lot less, but you can definitely just like decimate it again like maybe 0.3 and just apply it by hitting Control A over it. And you'll see that this is a lot smaller now. It's only 50k vertices. So depending on your set, you should definitely use this to ease in the load on your PC. So let me just start sculpting on these parts. I'll set it to 0.003 again. And I'm going to use the scrape brush. So before I didn't use the cut brush too much. So this time I'm going to try to make use of it. So same thing. Just try to have a variation in size and just how big the scrape is. Just make it try to go up or down. If you press shift, you can smooth over your scrapes a bit in case you feel like it's too jaggedy. Okay, so now we can use our slash brush a bit and just cut it a bit. So that was a bit too strong. I'll make the brush size smaller. And I'll just start with a soft strength and just make it higher as I go down. And you can definitely have some pretty nice cuts. And now that is good enough for a second one. If you don't like this matte cap, you can definitely try many different ones. I have some I have made myself, and you can download them for free on my Gumroad. Let me just go back to the main matte cap. Same thing, just voxel remesh to however much you need. If you don't want to type in the values, you can just hit Shift R, choose the density you want. It has a really nice visual indicator, and hit Control R to apply the remesh. So now it is remeshed. Let me just go back to my scrape brush and I'll just start painting it in again. So I'm pretty happy with these scrapes. I'm just gonna turn on my draw sharp and draw some cuts. Make sure that it is not too strong. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this part as well. So hit Control S to save in case you haven't. And let us work on this one. So for this one, it is actually symmetrical from left to right. So what I can do is you just sculpt on one part and I'm going to just flip it onto the other side to save some time. It's not something that I really recommend, but if you're on a time budget, then it's something that you can definitely do. And since everything is so repetitive, I think you guys will have already understood the lesson by now. I guess I didn't apply my modifiers, so just make sure to apply your bevel and mirror on this one. And now go into sculpt mode, same thing. Shift R to change your voxel remesh size. I'm going to put it at 0.203. Hit Control R to apply your remesh, and now we can start sculpting. So I'll set a scrape brush. Usually around here, you would probably not have so much slashes, so just keep that in mind because you will have to consider how the weapon is actually being used. So I usually like to pick a corner like this and just take out quite a lot. Like on the bottom side, usually you won't see it too much, so I won't give it too much attention. I'll just have it be on the corners and the sides that are mostly visible. So another thing I want to do is you just go into object mode, right click and shade smooth. Just so that you don't have the weird shading. Sometimes you'll have some weird sharpness, and that's because your auto smooth is turned on. So just make sure to just turn it off so that you don't have it anymore. So things will look a bit more accurate. Let me just also mirror it onto the other side. So what you can do is to use the auto mirror tool. So if you were to go to edit and preferences, and let me just go by changing my editor first because it won't show up on my recording otherwise. In preferences, make sure to turn on auto mirror, which is this one. And when you turn it on, you can mirror things pretty easily. So let me just go back to my viewport and go to the end panel. You can go into edit, auto mirror, and you can just mirror it from left to right by just turning this on. So I guess it should have been from right to left. So I'm just going to press Ctrl Z to undo it. It may be different in your case. So just turn it to negative and mirror, and you'll see that it's being mirrored pretty well. I'm going to also just apply the mirror. And what I'll do is to go into edit mode, press A to select everything, press P and separate by loose parts. And it'll just separate them into two different objects. But for this one, I'm going to just press S. I'm going to flip it onto the other side. So I'll press S, Y, and -1. And what it does is that it'll scale it by -1 so that it'll show this side onto the other side. And I'm going to just join them both again with Control J. And just make sure that like your name is still correct. If it has a 0.001, just rename it to _high, or else you'll have problems. And sometimes if you have weird shading like this, just select everything while you're in edit mode and hit Shift N to recalculate normals. And what it does is that it'll just flip your normals until it's all facing the right direction. So now I pretty much sculpted this part, so let us work on this part, I guess. So I'll apply my solidify by hitting Control A, as well as my bevel by hitting Control A, and the mirror as well. And we can work on this part for the next video because it's already been like 15 minutes. So I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.